Greetings, adventurers, and welcome back to Abnormal Voyages. My name is David, and today we find ourselves in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Today we have a slightly somber voyage as we enter here at the Oklahoma City National Memorial and Museum. Come tag along as we find out all about the disaster that happened with the Oklahoma City bombing, and remember those that were lost.
We're going to a place that you've never heard of before. It's Abnormal Voyages. You're gonna learn something new. We're gonna open new doors. It's Abnormal Voyages.
You feel the weight of this subject as soon as you enter the museum, which is built in the same location as the building where the bombing took place.
Wednesday, April 19th, 1995 was a day like any other. Here we can actually see the newspapers of the day, regular headlines, just people going about their business. But soon, everything would change. We're about to go through a timeline of that day and see just how things were and what happened after the bombing occurred.
It was just another morning at the Alfred P. Murrah building. Little did the occupants know this was a day that would change their lives forever. At 6:30 a.m., some people were just waking up. The mayor and local leaders were at a breakfast that was only 5 blocks away from this building. By the time 8 a.m. rolled around, employees were beginning to show up, and kids were being dropped off in the daycare that was located in the Murrah building. As you can see, this being a federal building, there were quite a few branches and organizations that had offices inside. But just like the daycare I mentioned, there were plenty of non-federally owned businesses that would ultimately be massively affected by this explosion. And besides the actual Murrah building itself, there were plenty of other businesses and even a church right next to the building, all closely located together. To show you an example of this, we are actually going to switch our attention. It is now 9 a.m., right before the bombing is going to happen. This is a recording during the explosion that happened across the street where they were in the middle of a hearing about being allowed to pump some water from their property.
It's 9 a.m. and the hearing examiner will be blue light. Well, good morning. We're going to open the record in this proceeding with regard to application 95-501 for a groundwater permit. My name's Lou Claver, and I've been designated by the 9-member Oklahoma Water Resources Board to serve as the hearing examiner in this matter. And we're arguments directly to the 9-member board. They generally meet the second Tuesday of every month. So you'll be advised of that. With regard to this proceeding, basically there are 4 elements that I have to receive information regarding.
And here is the sign of the Oklahoma Water Resources Board building, where that recording we just listened to took place, this being all that remains of that building. I think it goes without saying that this event was devastating and very unexpected.
We've now reached the point in the timeline where the bomb has gone off, and this is the aftermath and everything that happened immediately after.
Quite a bit of what you're going to find on display here is remains of the building. You're going to see rubble, pieces of the building, things from the offices, pieces from survivors, pieces from those who did not survive. And while it is fascinating, it's also sometimes difficult to look at, knowing that this was just regular people trying to go about their daily lives when something so evil struck them out of nowhere. One of the worst things is, of course, that there was a daycare in this building and a local YMCA nearby that was also used as a daycare and affected by this explosion. Seeing simple things like these shoes here really drives home the fact that they were attached to people. This is a picture of the nearby church and then what it became. Here's the biggest piece that they could recover from it, which was this window here. Once a really nice building, quickly reduced to nothing. It's difficult to see something like this and not be reminded of the tragedy of 9/11. Though when this event happened, 9/11 was still a few years off, so a terrorist attack on this level was unheard of. This was just something that people could not wrap their heads around. As a matter of fact, when it first happened, most people expected that it was an accident of some kind. Perhaps there had been a gas leak, some issue with the pipes, and that is what caused the explosion. Unfortunately, we would learn that this act was caused on purpose by some very twisted individuals. Though in the face of such a terrible act, the city of Oklahoma City quickly came together. The fire, police, and medical teams were on site as fast as they possibly could be, rushing to save as many lives as possible. For every heartbreaking story of loss, there was just as many heroic, courageous stories filled with bravery and selfless acts on this day. I think it's really important that we have places like this to remind us that not everything is always great and happy in life, that sometimes tragedy does strike. But through this, we can not only remember the victims, but we also remember that we will get through this. As a country, as a world, as a people, humans will come together and even in the worst of times, show that we can be the best. Just like Rebecca Anderson here, she was a registered nurse who rushed people out and then ran back into the rubble to try to save more lives. Unfortunately, her rushing in to save people ended up costing her her own life.
Of course, there were many survivors to this tragic event, and this database here goes through their stories of those that went through this. You can actually select either by picture up here, you can go by what their organizations they were, where they worked, there's location, their hometown name if you're looking for somebody specific. Otherwise, through these pictures here, you can hit somebody. This is Rebecca Denny. This tells a little bit about her story. And you can scroll through and see different video clips about her. We get out of that. You can pick anybody on this list and find out all about them and learn how this day affected their lives.
And in the midst of trying to get people out and save them, they were also trying to figure out what exactly had happened. As we learned, it was not an accident. Somebody had parked a truck right outside the building, filled with explosive devices, and then set it off. Just a massive, massive car bomb. Incredibly, you can even see the remains of this truck here on display. Once they knew that this was no accident, it quickly turned into a manhunt, figuring out who was responsible for this heinous act of terrorism. Using clues left behind from the remains of the truck, they were able to piece together a suspect list, and they knew who they were going after. At the same time, the world was being alerted to what just happened.
And it was evil. The United States will not tolerate it, and I will not allow the people of this country to be intimidated by evil cowards.
I'm Brian Williams, NBC Nightly News.
I'm Katie Couric, CBS News.
I'm Charles Gibson from ABC's World News.
Good morning, everyone. It is a scene of...
With all disasters, first responders are key to helping get through the emergency. This board here gives you an idea of where each of the different departments were. You can see we have fire and rescue, law enforcement, canine, medical, FEMA. Everybody's there helping out. This is what it all looked like. But if you want to get a better idea of exactly where each group was, you can click on them. So for example, the canine unit, we hit canine, and it shows you canines that were on site, and then where they helped. You see there's the dog right there. They're helping find people, get them out of the rubble. And then, just to give you a really overarching picture of everything, you can change it to nighttime and see how their plan of attack went forward, dealing with the nighttime and where people moved to strategically to help rescue as many people as possible.
That night, even though the sun set, the rescue workers did not stop. They continued to work as hard as they could, trying to find any people left alive in the rubble. It had been a very sad and very long day, but the workers never gave up hope, working tirelessly as long as they possibly could, and help was arriving from all over the country. From multiple states arrived more help in ways of resources, manpower, anything they could send to help Oklahoma get through this terrible event.
April 19th, the actual day of the bombing, is now over, but the effects of what happened would be much longer lasting. We now go to the days and months that followed the event.
Though the bombing had happened in seconds, the after effects would be with Oklahoma for weeks, months, and years. Especially in those first few days when they were still sorting through rubble, the counts kept going up. Some of those were counts of people pulled out that had survived, who'd been trapped and were now free, but also the count of bodies they were finding, the remains of those who had passed during the attack. Oklahoma City mourned for their loss, as did the entirety of the world. More than just man's best friend, search dogs were an invaluable aid to this kind of operation. Being able to sniff people out helped them find survivors much faster than any human just trying to sift through rubble ever could hope to. And speaking of searching for people, luckily, it didn't take long at all to know exactly who was behind this heinous act and capture them for justice. The main perpetrator was a man by the name Timothy McVeigh, and he was aided by Terry Nichols. McVeigh was the extremist mastermind behind this, and he felt that what he had done was justified, as the federal government had not been fair to the people and were attacking our rights, in particular, the Second Amendment rights. He didn't appreciate the way things had gone down in the Waco incident with the Branch Davidians, and he purposely planned his attack on the anniversary of what had happened in Waco, Texas. This Dreamland sign was the sign of the actual motel where McVeigh stayed and planned out the entire attack. Police had been able to get him on their radar by looking at the remains of the license plate from the truck that had blown up. They were able to trace that rental back to him, and eventually he got arrested because he was pulled over for driving without a license plate on his car. Once he was pulled over, the police that did it realized that this was somebody that was wanted for questioning in the attack and promptly took him into custody. 6 years later, Timothy McVeigh would be executed by lethal injection, and his accomplice, Terry Nichols, was sentenced to life in prison, where he still remains to this day. It's difficult to see a bright side or silver lining to an event like this, but the best we can do is look to the hope that in the future, nothing like this ever happens again. When the final counts came out, it was 680 people injured and 168 people who sadly passed away in this attack.
The next floor of the museum houses the Gallery of Honor, where they remember all the victims who were killed during the bombing.
I really like that this was part of the museum, because ultimately, this is their story. So having a place for their families and loved ones to come honor them, and for new people to learn about them and remember them, is very touching. Similarly, outside, there is another really impressive monument to the people that went through this terrorist attack. The two large arches on the sides have the times of when the explosions happened, and then in the middle, there is a chair representing all 168 people who lost their lives. At nighttime, these light up and illuminate the memorial. It's honestly a little difficult to wrap your head around 168 people and what that really looks like. Just hearing the number is one thing, but seeing it right here on the field and imagining each one of these chairs as a person and then all those people lost shows you just how devastating this truly was. But then we also have this beautiful tree, one that actually survived the bombing. It just goes to show that life will always find a way.
Places like this truly humble us and remind us just how precious life is. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for tagging along. My name is David, and this has been Abnormal Voyages. See you in the next one.